raise some
Cain. You gotta raise some Cain. In the heartland where the faith runs strong, we've seen the shadows growing long. Watch those around us be deceived. Yeah, the fight is at our doors, no matter who we believe. Corruption, lawless day and night, we'll speak the truth into the light. We'll bring the battle, heed the call, watch the whole thing fall. We gotta raise some Cain, show the lies, break some chains and make things right. Feel the power, be the change, time is now. We gotta raise some Cain.
Welcome to the Raising Cain Show. Today, we're honored to have a truly extraordinary guest, Dr. Norman E. Wood Jr. He's a man who's lived a life most of us can only imagine, going undercover to take down international drug cartels as a decorated federal agent, healing the sick as a physician in urgent care, the VA, and at correctional facilities, and even inventing life-saving devices with multiple patents to his name. From busting the largest drug haul in U.S. history, 56 tons, to writing gripping historical fiction based on his real-life adventures, Dr. Wood has spent decades fighting for justice and helping those in need. Today, he's here to talk about a crisis close to his heart, MIDAH, the intersection of mental illness, drug addiction, and homelessness. With his unique journey from law enforcement to medicine, Dr. Wood brings a perspective you won't find anywhere else. So let's dive in. Dr. Wood, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Nate. Nice to be here.
So this issue has been, one that has existed for a very long time in our country, and it seems like different things have been tried and very few things seem to be effective. I grew up in Los Angeles, and if you remember, there was I think it was back in the 80s, they shut down all the state-run, mental health facilities and just let everybody out. And of course, those people ended up getting off of their meds and they were homeless and turned to other drugs. And now you walk around and in Los Angeles, certain areas, and it's full of homeless people that are mentally ill and that are drug addicted. And we've seen this all over the country. So I guess, what I want to, maybe a good place to start is, what exactly is MIDAH and why do you see it as such a growing crisis in America today?
Well, you touched on exactly how this all started in 1980 with the Mental Health Systems Act, and that was during Reagan. And what they did, they took federal funding from the state institutions, the state hospitals, and then they started directing that money towards the community health clinics. And at the time, it was a novel idea. It sounded like it made a lot of sense. If we got the clinic closer to the people, maybe we could do more good. And they do a lot of good for the minor stuff. I mean, the minor mental illnesses or depression, anxiety, minor stuff like that, that's normally handled in the doctor's office. But with the severe mental illness, with schizophrenia, borderline personality disorder, the severe mental illnesses, they can't touch those. And the other thing is, anybody that has any addiction, they can't adequately treat those people either. It's just not possible. And I'll explain to you why as we go through this.
So I've talked to, when I was running for office here in West Virginia, I spoke to a number of people who had previously been addicted to heroin or, other drugs. And it was interesting because I would not have expected to hear this, but in both cases, I remember where I had an in-depth conversation, both of them women, what they had been clean for like 13, 15 years. And I asked them, I said, what was effective? I said, what helped you to get clean and stay clean? And both of them said the threat of losing their daughter. Both of these women had daughters. And that, so law enforcement interaction basically is what got them straight. And, being able to work things out, I guess, through drug court. There is a misnomer I think a lot of people have in thinking that you can just treat this with methadone and other things like that. But what I found in talking to these people, they said that needle exchange programs don't help. They just perpetuate the problem. And so I'm curious as to what you've seen in terms of in your experience, and you've got the unique perspective of being on both sides of it, being on the treatment side, but also being on the law enforcement side. What do you see as some of the effective things that have been done and things that are completely a waste of taxpayers' dollars?
Well, since the 1980s, pretty much everything we've done has been proved over the decades that they do not work. And we thought it was a good idea to move this stuff into the community mental health centers. And they try the best they can, but we have evidence here recently, and a lot of this research is being done by the National Institute of Health and the National Institute of Drug Abuse. And the lady that has been leading that research, her name is Dr. Rita Goldstein, and she's from the Mount Sinai Medical School. It's called ICON. And I talked to Rita just the other day. And what they have been doing with the neuroimaging, and I'll show you a little page of this, and I think you should be able to see it. But
yeah, if you hit the present button, you should be able to bring it up, and it'll push us to the side and put it up on the screen.
Okay, excellent. It takes the brain, and the brain in our neurosystem is the slowest healing organs in the body. So when we have an addiction, whether it be drugs or alcohol, and even with marijuana, even the low class type of narcotics, they are all neurotoxic to the brain, and it does damage to the brain. And we can measure that now. We can actually do MRIs and see where their brain is not reflective of a normal, healthy brain. And we all also have determined, well, Dr. Goldstein and her group has determined that healing, once abstinence has occurred, it takes, just for the healing to start, takes 3 to 4 months just to start. And the brain doesn't actually heal. It doesn't have enough time to heal until out to like 14 months, 14 to 16 months. So you can see now why the local detox centers that maybe hold somebody for 30 days, they're never going to work. If you talk to these people that's been in the detox centers, they've been in and out of multiple detox centers. And 60% of the patients that go through the local community detox centers will relapse in 1 month. In the first 30 days, 60% of those will relapse. And it sets them back to zero. 90% will relapse within the first year. Sets them back to zero. The remaining 10%, part of that remaining 10% are the ones that overdosed and died. And they're not in that relapse. They're not counted as a relapse. They're gone. There are a very few, and I always, in my experience in doing this for the last 25 years, it's like only about 2%, maybe 3% if we're lucky, have the ability to get away from the drugs. And you're right about the women and children. You talk about a driving force for a woman that gives her that strength to do this, it's having a child and having the possibility of having that child taken off of her. And I was in Wheeling, West Virginia tonight, talking to the mayor and to a council member. He told me the exact same thing. He was helping this young lady who was addicted to, I believe he told me, heroin. And she had a young daughter. And he told her that he was going to have the daughter taken away by Child Protective Services or whatever. And that was the impetus for her to get clean. And she's been clean now for 9 months, which is extraordinary. Most people can't make it out to that 9 months. So she's doing great. And it's because she has a child. Now, the men don't have that ability for the most part. There's not a lot that a man can really hang on to once he's addicted to the drugs, because even with women, they don't feel normal. For them to feel the most normal is when they are high. The brain, the pleasure centers, the nucleus accumbens in the middle of the brain, the drugs can force out more dopamine than even the most enjoyable natural thing in life. So the drugs take over that pleasure center, and after that, you're just along for the ride. But the biggest part of this, they do the damage. Narcotics do damage to the prefrontal lobe. That's where we do our reasoning, our thinking, our decision making, and it can damage the prefrontal cortex. And it can be that way for up to a year or longer. If you talk to a really good drug addiction counselor, he'll tell you that to get off heavy narcotics, it takes about 2 years. And he's absolutely correct.
Now, I've seen what you're talking about. I've seen with a man that was a very severe alcoholic, and I remember, talking with him, and he said to me he could not quit drinking or he would die. And the funny thing about it is, I thought he was just joking, but I watched him one time try to stop drinking, and the man was shaking so uncontrollably and sweating and just did not seem well and was, not making sense. After drinking, he was more normal than, than when he was not on alcohol. And I think that I was really shocked because I didn't even realize that was even a possibility. And so I think that that's part of the problem, is that when people get so addicted, that period of time of getting clean and getting their brain to start functioning the right way and start producing, producing the right chemicals on its own, that is a very scary thing, and it probably a dangerous thing too, I imagine.
Well, it is with alcohol, especially coming off an alcohol cold turkey. You can have what's called Wernicke's, and you can have really bad seizures with the brain, and with the seizures, then you have hypoxia, and you can have damage. When you're cold turkeying off of alcohol, it's actually more dangerous than if you cold turkey off of narcotics. Narcotics, when you cold turkey, you're going to feel
I think I lost some video here. Hang on, folks. I got looks like we're having some bandwidth issues. Okay, I'm checking here.
miserable. You're going to feel like you got the bad flu.
Dr. Wood, I'm losing your signal. It keeps freezing your video.
There, we're coming back.
There we go.
There we go. Okay, so what I was talking about the danger of coming off of alcohol compared to narcotics. It is actually very dangerous coming off of alcohol if you've been an alcoholic for an extended period of time. You need to be on some medication, some thiamine, vitamins, as well as some anti-anxiety medication to keep you down to where you're not going to have those seizures. Coming off of narcotics, people feel miserable, but most people don't die coming off of narcotics.
So I'm really curious. You were somebody who was in the fight, in the war on drugs, going after the cartels, going after major drug dealers, and you involved in the biggest bust in U.S. history. How do you go from that to being a doctor? I mean, was there some sort of like moment in your life that just said, that I don't want to do this anymore. I want to go be a doctor. I want to be on the side of healing? Or what, tell us the story about how that worked. How did you end up becoming a doctor?
Well, I'm from a medical family. I'm the 15th doctor in my family. I think we're up now over 20, counting my brothers and cousins and father and everybody else. So I fought that for a long, long time. Also, after making the largest drug bust in history, what else am I going to do if I stay in the government? Right?
I guess so.
You know, I would after that time, and after the failed coup of 1991, and the USSR dissolved, KGB was disbanded, and the Cold War ended. I'm like, what else am I going to do? So that's when I left the government and returned home to West Virginia to go to medical school.
So when you've been involved in fighting, you know, this fighting drugs and all of that, we've seen so much that has not been effective in the war on drugs. It seems like there's no stopping it. Although I would say that I think closing our borders at least is a step in the right direction. And I think designating the cartels, you know, as terrorist organizations, also I think a step in the right direction. But even still, when things were really tough, you know, tough on drugs before, it seemed like it was a non-winning battle all the time. I'm curious as your thoughts about that. Do you feel like that there is? Do you think it's possible for us to win this war? Number one.
No. As long as there's human beings, there's going to be bad behavior. I mean, all of us growing up, the brain really doesn't mature until you're 25 to 30 years of age. You know, look at all of the things that I know that I've done when I was younger. I wish I had not done. I'm lucky to have lived through a lot of things that I did do. And, you know, when we're young, we experiment, and, you know, we really don't know what the hell we're doing. We got the IQ of a large German Shepherd, you know, when we're young, and we're just, and if we survive through that period, for most of us, we end up being, you know, pretty good human beings. But a lot of times during that period of our life of maturation, the young people, they want to try different things, and we all did. I mean, you know, I used to just love to chug a whole pitcher of beer, you know, and stuff like that when you're younger. You know, just stupid stuff. You know, stupid. We wouldn't do it today. But a lot of the kids are getting hooked on drugs, and they're getting on this narcotics. And once they start getting addicted to the narcotics, that's when the brain changes. That's when the damage is to the brain. And after that, they can't help it. They can't help it. So you're right. There's got to be a two-pronged attack on this. We have to secure the borders. We have to lock up the smugglers. And I mean, a mandatory minimum 10 years for the smugglers. And even if they're addicts, we still have to lock them up for minimum mandatory 10 years. Then maybe towards the last 2 years of their sentence, if we have state hospitals, then we can move them into a state hospital and try to get them back into a quality of life that they can continue once they get out. But a lot of the young people that get addicted, where are we going to send them? The community-based systems don't work because of the reasons that I've already pointed out. Their brains cannot heal in 14 to 30 day detox. Only thing they're doing, they're coming down off of that current high. But I guarantee you, most of those people will be right back out that weekend getting high with their friends. I mean, they can't help it. Their brains can't stop them. They don't. There's not enough time that has passed by to where the brain has healed. That's why we have to have some, and that's the problem. Where are we going to put these people right now? When I was talking to the mayor tonight in Wheeling, it's like, what do we do? I mean, these are good people. They want to solve this problem. They have homeless camps around Wheeling, and they have lots of people that are in and out of Northwood, and Northwood tries to do the best thing they can. The judges have no place to send these people. There's no state hospital that the judge can say, you know, instead of I'm giving you 3 to 5 years in the state penitentiary, you're getting 3 to 5 years in the state hospital. They can't do that because we don't have a state hospital to do that with. Most states do. West Virginia does not. And West Virginia not only does not have a state hospital where we can put the mentally ill, the drug addicted, and the homeless into, to where we can really give them real help, we're also have the greatest rate of drug overdose in the nation. You know, we're per capita, we're the highest drug overdose rate in the nation.
Now, the drug overdose is largely due to the introduction of fentanyl into these drugs. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, all of it. The fentanyl causes more deaths than it does anything else. But a lot of these people, West Virginia, a lot of methamphetamine in West Virginia, a lot of cocaine, a lot of heroin. Of course, when the fentanyl comes in, the fentanyl is there as well. But the people that have tried to wean themselves off of drugs and their tolerance continues to increase, when they go back on, they will take an amount of drugs that puts them into respiratory distress. And that's what kills people, is that respiratory distress. And the fentanyl, it's like 40% more potent than heroin. So if you get enough of that fentanyl, it's going to kill you just deader than a doornail.
Yeah. And my understanding is that drug dealers have learned to cut their product with fentanyl because it's cheaper, and they can mix it in and get the high, and that's part of the problem.
Yes, it is.
I've read stories about.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I read story, and plus too, I've worked at the DEA, and of course we have our meetings, and we have our mandatory meetings with the administrator. What's been fascinating is to find out some of the problems that have happened. Is the drug dealers have targeted like high school students. And so what they've done is they've laced, things that are normally party drugs that normally would not kill you, with fentanyl. And you've got some kid who's a, star athlete, goes to a party, takes what he thinks, is ecstasy, and ends up dropping dead of a heart attack.
Yeah, we're losing 4 people a day in West Virginia, about 100 or about 1,400 a year. So we got about 4 dead young people a day, and normally they're young people.
Yeah.
And that needs to be stopped. So and I applaud President Trump. He's got to get on China to stop sending the precursors to Mexico. We need to start sending over the Deltas and the SEALs and anybody else, that the Marine Recon, cross that border and stomping those people out. It has to be done. We have to make an example of them. We have to stop, because they're killing our people. They're killing up to 100,000 Americans every year, and we're doing absolutely nothing about it because it's in another country. But since they've been designated now as a national or international terrorist organization, we can pull off the gloves and go hit them where we need to.
There's 2 other things that Trump has done that I think are critical to his strategy in combating this. One is he's reinstated the federal death penalty, and I think that's intentional because he's made comments before. He wants to see the death penalty for these major drug dealers that are killing people with fentanyl. The other thing, and I think that's something that's got to happen. The other thing that he's talked about is, well, not talked about, he's doing it, is Guantanamo. One of the problems I know that we've had with the groups like MS-13 and Tre de Aragua and others is that while here in the United States, if they end up in our prison system, they end up growing their network of connections with other, they grow their gangs, they grow all of that. Whereas if we can move them to Guantanamo, the really hardened guys that are involved with, human trafficking, drug trafficking, they've expanded the number of cells there. They've also expanded the courthouses there. And my understanding is they're going to start, and they have 2 sides of it. They've got the one side that is for the hardened criminals, and then they have the other side, which has a migratory camp where mostly they've been dealing with like Haitians there. But my understanding is they're going to start moving people there that they can't just immediately extradite. They're going to get sent there. And I think that makes sense because we need to create some deterrence. And right now there are few deterrents for these guys.
Absolutely. And there's no shortage of drugs in the prisons. Prison, if people think that we're going to send somebody to prison for 3 to 4 or 5 years and they're going to get clean, that's ignoring the reality of things, because there's drugs that are smuggled into the prison, and these people sell the drugs within the prison. So nobody goes to prison and gets clean.
I saw a video. Actually, this is during one of our DEA all hands. They had a video that was taken of a drone flying to the prison. A guy sticks his hand out between the bars, and the drone dropped a package of drugs to this guy in the prison. So
Yeah.
smuggling drugs into a prison, not that hard.
No, it's
Not
not.
that hard at
And
all.
it goes on in every 50 states.
Yep. In fact, that's a concern I know that that we're facing right now, is this issue of, in the past it was always human, traffickers that were moving the drugs across the border. Now they can just fly it over the border with a drone. So we've got to develop better technology for taking out these drones. That's one thing I think that, we have to do.
Yeah, drones are scary. Drones are scary. I mean, it's going to change the battlefield. If you're a man out there with a rifle and you've got a drone that's coming towards you and it's got a half pound of C4 strapped to it, you're in deep trouble.
Yeah, all you have to do is look at what's happened, between Russia and the Ukraine, because drone warfare has been one of the ways that the Ukraine has lasted this long, because they've utilized very cheap drones to fly, bombs and drop them right on top of Russian troops.
Yes.
So it is a problem, and it's something that concerns me. Now, going back to the issue of the root causes of addiction. And this is something that for me, because I grew up in a healthy household. My parents kept me engaged in marching band and sports and other things like that. I never got mixed up in that. And I do credit that, programs like the DARE program, which was very active when I was in school, it really ingrained in me, this fear, of getting involved in drugs. But I've often wondered, what is it that drives people into drug abuse? I mean, we see that it's so prevalent here in West Virginia. Obviously, we won major cases with the opioid thing. And I do know of at least one person in my family who had an addiction problem with opioids because of medical procedure that she, had, and then basically was, given nothing but pain pills. But eventually, she was able to get free from that. But what is the root cause, do you think, for most of these people that gets them not only hooked on drugs, but into it in the first place?
A lot of it is lack of education and lack of discipline in the schools. When when I was, I don't admit this too often, but when I was in elementary school, I got whipped 3 times by the same science teacher, and it was a woman. And the first time she did it, I thought, well, this is not going to be anything. Well, what it was, Mrs. Simon, and she had a dividing line down the middle of that room, and the boys on one side and the girls on the other. Well, she caught me over there on the other side. I was trying to help Penny Wiley and Kathy Yater. And anyways, the first time that she was going to give me 3 cracks, I'm like, yeah, it's a lady. She's not going to be able to swing that board very hard. She about popped my eyeballs out. And I mean, she would go way back when she was bringing that board around. So, I mean, you got to have the discipline in the classrooms. I mean, the teachers right now, they're scared to death of some of the students. The students are just running roughshod over the teachers, and the teachers are trying to do the best thing they can. And that's the discipline in the schools, but also human nature. We like to experiment. We're young, we're stupid. Like I said, we got the IQ of a German Shepherd, or maybe a Border Collie. Border Collie may be a little smarter than the German Shepherd, but it's human nature to do this type of stuff. And the trouble with the narcotics today, they're so potent, they're so powerful, that euphoria, that high that these people get, it doesn't take very long, maybe a couple of times, maybe not that first time, but most people can't walk away from it even after that first time. And usually by that second, that third time that they've used the drugs, they're along for the ride.
So they're chasing that high.
Yes, they're chasing that high.
Wow.
Maybe things are not the best at home. Maybe, none of us had the perfect childhood. And I mean, it's tough when you're growing up, when you're going through that maturation phase. Everybody goes through difficulties especially in their teenage years, and even in their early 20s, people still have problems. And I know that as as of the age of 18 were supposed to be adults. Well, that's only a legal statute. That has nothing to do with medical. Your brain's really not maturing until you're 25 to 30.
You know, it's interesting. You mentioned about corporal punishment. That probably has a lot to do with why I stayed straight, because I got a lot of that in school. I was ADD, so of course, I was always running around where I shouldn't be. And I remember actually, the janitor was the one who did the ass whoopings, and we all and I led a group of kids, down to the they had the auditorium, and there was a bunch of girls that were going to be doing ballet down there, and I led, I was like in elementary school. We wanted to go down and spy on the girls, and so we went down there, and I had a whole bunch of my buddies I brought with me. Well, we got caught. We got dragged up to the hall, and I stood in the back of the line, and he knew, so he went and grabbed me, whooped me, and then let everybody else go. So that was it. It worked,
Yeah.
And I had strict parents. My parents, they always knew what I was up to. And, it was interesting. And I'll never forget a conversation that my father had with me in high school. I was a good kid. I got saved very early at 16, and I had a radical, conversion and faith experience that just changed my life. That kept me out of a lot of trouble right there. But I'll never forget, my senior year was the first time I ever got invited to a party. And I wanted to go because I'd never been to a party, because I was always the straight kid that, didn't do drugs and didn't drink. And I wanted to go because it was just seemed like a rite of passage. And my father, I asked him, and he said to me, he said, "Is there going to be alcohol there?" I said, "Yeah, probably, but I'm not going to drink." And then he said, "Do you think there might be drugs there?" And I said, "I don't know, maybe, but I'm definitely not doing that." And my dad, rather than tell me no, he said to me, he said, "Well, I want you to think about, I know you've worked really hard." My dad wasn't particularly religious or anything, but he just said to me, "Look, I know you've worked really hard to have a reputation as a Christian and as a good person." He says, "And I want you to think about how it's going to look if you're at this party, and do you really want to be associated with that?" And so he made me go think about it. And I sat in my room for a little bit, and I thought about it, and I go, "You know what? Nah, I really don't." And so I chose not to go. And my dad told me many years later that was the hardest thing he ever had to do when I was growing up, was to do that, because he was going to let me go, but he was hoping that I would make the right choice. And what ended up happening was, not only was there drugs at that party, somebody brought a gun,
Wow.
ended up shooting somebody. The cops showed up, and everybody at that party got arrested.
Wow.
So I would have had a record, if I had been at that party. And so thank God, that I didn't go to that. But it was just like, to me, that was a big wake up call too.
Yeah, we gotta have good homes, and there's a lot of single parent households out there trying to raise kids, and it's super hard for those people, whether it's a man or a woman. It's normally the women that have the single household, and it's very difficult, especially if you have young boys, because young boys, I mean, they can be heathens, and unless you have a strong, very strong woman, I mean, a super strong woman that can take care of the boys, the woman doesn't understand what these boys are up to. I mean, my mom didn't know nothing about what I was doing most of the time.
Yeah.
But I couldn't slip much past my father, though. I mean, he caught on real quick. So we have to have good families. We have to have good homes for the kids as best we can, and then we have to educate them on why this stuff is so bad and how quickly it can ruin your life and take your life. I mean, a lot of these kids that are out here experimenting with the drugs, they don't get a second chance. There's not always somebody standing there with a Narcan.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
well, and in some cases,
unfortunate.
and in some cases now with some of these drugs where they're mixing things together, the Narcan doesn't do a whole lot of good.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to have multiple Narcans just to keep them alive. They'll go into respiratory failure, and a lot of times they don't come out of it.
Now, you've also talked about the homelessness issue, and you talked about up there in Wheeling. It baffles me how anybody in West Virginia, especially in the wintertime, can be homeless, because it is so damn cold here. And, you know, like I can understand. It's funny. When I was in Hawaii, there were a lot of homeless people and they had their tents up on the beach on the west side of the island. And it was kind of like just like they had beachfront property there and it was nice. You know, it's like they actually had you know, I was shocked because there were families that were living in tents, like with their children and everything. And their way of dealing with it in Hawaii is different than I've seen in other places. You know, they don't take the kids away as long as the kids are going to school and they're being fed, you know, and then they can stay there with their parents on the beach in a tent. But I imagine things are very different here in West Virginia. I don't know of too many shelters that are available. And, you know, I imagine that you've got, you know, how do people survive the winters here when they're homeless?
It's very difficult. When you're talking about the MIDAH, the mentally ill, drug addicted, and homeless, you're talking actually about 3 different populations. You're talking about one, the population that's incarcerated. And, you know, we're talking about 70 to 80% of the population of the prisons. They're either addicted to drugs or they're serving and they're in for drug offenses or they're in for property crimes that are associated to the drug use. A lot of these times, these people are stealing, you know, your weed eater out of your garage and taking it to the pawn shop to get the, you know, the $20 to get their next hit. And that's what happens with a lot of these property crimes, whether it's cars or smaller things, you know, breaking into homes and stealing their guns and stuff. And the other population is the functional addict. That is the person who's out here, who's addicted to some substance, and they're giving it their damnedest and their all, trying to maintain their life, trying to keep their family together, still going to work. I mean, there's several of those people out there as well. And then the final group is the homeless. And 95% of the homeless, and that is a conservative figure. And I have taken care of thousands of the homeless. One of my jobs before I came back in 2019, I helped run 14 urgent care clinics in Seattle. One was on Aurora Avenue where the Green River Killer got his prostitute victims. Another one was on Capitol Hill where we had the riots. And we saw the homeless population, the street walkers, everything every day. I have taken care of thousands of those people. And the homeless population, 95% or better, are either mentally ill, drug addicted, or both. So either their mental illness that is keeping them out there in that tent because they don't want to associate outside of that environment. They like that. I don't even like to call it a lifestyle, but they like that type of existence. And a lot of those people have what's called anosognosia. And that anosognosia is when their brain is not capable of understanding that they have a problem. So when you're talking to those people and you say, listen, you know, you're schizophrenic, or, you know, you've got a problem. They're like, I don't have a problem. You're the one that's got the problem. And a lot of that is prevalent in a lot of those homeless camps. So you're not going to convince those people that they have a problem. You're just not going to do it. They're going to stay in that camp. And if we think, you know, a lot of people think that that's compassionate care when we're giving them handouts and, you know, giving them blankets or maybe a warm meal here and there. That's not compassionate care. You know, letting somebody stay out in the freezing weather with no heat source, no warm meals, no sanitation. That is not compassionate care. That's societal neglect. We need to be able to have a place where we can put these people where we can give them the proper care. And right now in the state of West Virginia, we have zero. Right now, those people, when they come in contact with law enforcement, those people are all ending up in the jails or the prisons. That's where we're housing our mentally ill, drug addicted, and homeless right now, is in our prisons and our jails.
So, you know, you bring up a very good point, because I've talked to a number of sheriffs, and we have an overcrowding problem in our prisons in West Virginia, significant. They went from regional jail, or they went from, I think, county jails to a regional based system that really wasn't designed for the type of capacity that they're at. Now, if we went and figured out how many of these people that are in there for drug related crimes, I'm sure that the amount of money is a significant amount of money that is being used to house these people. Could the case be made to, say, our state legislature to say, hey, look, guys, we're spending this much money on housing, you know, criminally housing these people, when we could take that money and invest it in trying to help them by having some places for these people to go and get some treatment. What do you think about that? Is that something that you've thought about or approached anybody in our state legislature about?
Absolutely. When I was still the physician director of the West Virginia Division of Corrections and Rehabilitation, I even talked to the commissioner at that time, Betsy Jebedian, and I told her, I said, we need a state hospital because the prisons, we have 12 to 14 facilities. That's counting the prisons, the regional jails, the juvenile facilities. And we're paying over $200 million a year just to keep those places open. Now, back in the 1990s, our prison population was around 2,000. When the opioid epidemic hit us by 2015, that number had shot up to like 8,000 to 9,000. Currently, within the West Virginia Division of Correction Rehabilitation, we have 12,000 to 13,000, and that counts the prisons, the jails, and the juvenile facility. So it has absolutely exploded over the last 20 years because of the opioid epidemic. So we need to take part of that money, and with at least 75 to 80% of those people in prison right now are either there.
Looks like I lost your video feed again. Stay with us, folks. Just give us a minute. We'll get this working again. Hold on.
For drug offenses. There we go. Can you hear me, Nate?
Yep.
Okay, so if we would take a portion of the prison population, say, and there's currently about 6,000 to 7,000 in the prison system. And most hospitals, I mean, even if we had 100 beds, that means we would take 100 of those people of the drug addicted, get them into the hospital, because the average stay in prison right now is 3 years. So they're going to spend time. We're either going to leave them in the prison where they're not going to get any better, or we can put them in a hospital where they are going to get better. And then hopefully when they walk out, they're able to go back out into the real world, get a job, be productive citizens of the state, pay taxes, and not be a burden on the state. We have this revolving door that has been going on now for like 30 years, and it's only getting worse. We need to stop what we're doing, and we need to start investing, taking some of that money, investing it into a state-of-the-art state hospital to where we can do the MRIs of the brain and show that this is what we're starting with. I can show you the damage in your brain. And that's the thing about these MRI scans now. We can measure, we can quantify the damage, but even better than that, once they are coming out on the other side, it may take 12 months, maybe 18 months. We can redo the scans and we can show them, listen, you are absolutely getting better. This will empower those people, because up to this point, they've been getting lip service by a doctor or some counselor that's saying, yeah, I really think you're getting better. But now we can actually measure that improvement and say, yeah, you're actually getting better. That is empowering to somebody who has been fighting addiction for months and years.
Can we do something? I've got to run a couple of commercials, but when we come back from the commercial break, can we bring up some examples of what these scans look like? I think people would be interested to see.
Yeah, how do I do that? Tell me again, how do I do that?
If you bring it up in another window and then you do the present button down below, then you'll be able to select that window where it's being presented on. So I'm going to go ahead and run these commercials while you're setting that up.
Okay, very good.
Welcome to Shop with America, where the emphasis is on America. Our movement is to switch away from your shopping with the big box stores and the mega corporations back to supporting family-owned, made in America. We've been giving these big box stores our money every day for years. But what's happened is they've forced many small businesses to shut down. We call this the illusion of choice. We see all these products in these stores, but in reality, it's only a few companies that control it all. There are thousands of lawsuits for health damage because they put profit over our people. But there is another choice. We found a better way. There's a family-owned American factory with product integrity and have always done things the right way for the right reasons. And this company outperforms the big box stores. That's due to their month-to-month shopping club, They make everyday consumer products that we all use and buy again and again, like toothpaste, shampoo, coffee, and organic beef. Go to shopwithamerica.us today.
Increasing expenses have caused us all a lot of pressure these days, and it's affecting even the wealthiest of people. Most have lost their sense of security, stability, and even hope for a strong financial future. The game plan of everyone in your cell phone has likely been disrupted or even hardcore stopped, and most are looking for a creative solution to regain financial momentum. Oftentimes, life's best solutions are the simplest. But first, a question. What is something most people think they should own but don't? Crypto, fine art, real estate? Nope. We are talking about real money. The kind kings and queens fought for and large institutions today buy in mass. We're talking about gold and silver, assets that provide confidence in tough financial situations. So the question is, do you own any? If you don't, you're not alone. Most people aren't maximizing the power of precious metals because it's just been too complicated. And even though they see advertisements about gold and silver daily, they don't really know who to trust. That is, until now. The bottom line is that buying gold and silver doesn't have to be complicated or scary. There's a simple, better way to accumulate assets and create financial peace, headache-free. And this very minute, a new community of average people are seeing above average results to the tune of tens of millions in assets over the last few years. This system is tested, it's simple, and it's not an experiment. To date, it's helped more than 80,000 people bring hope back into their lives. It's invitation only, and right now, this new community has accepted a challenge to give away as much free gold this year as possible. Curious? Learn how to get your free gold today. Check out the next step to get the details.
It says, I woke up this morning and looked out the door to a country I don't recognize. They put masks on our face to hide our pain, and there's no fire in most people's eyes. And it's still true today. It's still true today that they've tried to destroy the American spirit. And in some instances, they've done a dadgum good job. But in other instances, they have lit an inferno in some people. And we right now are gathering some of those people that are on freaking fire to save this country.
Welcome back to the Raising Cain Show, and I'm here with Dr. Norman Wood. We've been talking about the problem of drug abuse, mental illness, and homelessness, and this is an issue that has affected our state of West Virginia, but it's not just a West Virginia issue. This is an issue that is across the nation, and it's something that we've been, that there's that saying that says that, if you keep doing the same thing and expect different results, that's the definition of insanity. And so maybe it's time we try something different. And so Dr. Wood and I have been talking about that. Before we get back into our discussion, I just want to make a mention about the commercials that you guys saw. Scrolling across the bottom of the screen, you'll find the links to how to get to the two of the commercials. One of them is FinishThisFight.us/Cain. That is a documentary that was produced by a friend of mine, and we've put this together. I'm in it. I get to share my story in it, but also you hear about a Glenn Baker story and several others that were in the making of that documentary. So I'd really recommend you guys check that out. One of the things that's being done is 50% of the proceeds of that documentary are going to help a American soldier that has lost his ability to walk be able to walk again by putting him into an exoskeleton. The other thing that I'll mention is the 7K medals, which if you go to 7kmedals.com/raising Cain, you can find out about the programs that they have. What I like about them, it's who I use. There's a lot of great gold and silver companies out there, but they're really designed for the individual out there who's not going to be going out and buying a ton of gold and a ton of silver, but just wants to get started in it. And they've got a lot of great education. You can do large purchases, or you can purchase just one coin a month, which is what I do. And, it's a great way to get started on something that, has value and can help you build some value. The last thing I'll mention here before we get back to it is when I do these commercials really, if you guys go and you check them out, they're affiliates. So if you check them out and you end up purchasing products from them, it helps the show, helps us to be able to keep the lights on. So, I would encourage you, if this is something you're interested in, to please go and make sure and use that code. All right, I'm going to go back now to the conversation. I'm going to bring this up, what you were talking about here. So what are we looking at right here?
Yeah, this is a MRI scan of the brain. And the far left is a healthy brain. That's healthy control. And this is a patient. The two scans to the right are of the same patient that has an addiction to methamphetamine. After 1 month of abstinence is the center scan, and you can see it does not look normal. There's no red areas of that brain. And the brighter the scan gets, it shows an increase in glucose uptake and activity, metabolism of the brain. And you can see that middle brain, even after 1 month of abstinence, it's still not functioning normal. And then if you look to the far right, that's after they've been off of the methamphetamine for 14 months. They're back to pretty much a normal brain as far as the scans go. And the other thing I want to mention is this is the mid area of the brain. But if you look at the top section, that's the prefrontal cortex. That is where a lot of the damage is also. And some of the other scans, you can see that, but not on this one. And that prefrontal cortex is where we make our decisions. And the same thing is evident when you do a scan of a healthy brain and then look at an addicted brain. That it's like all the lights are turned off to that prefrontal cortex. That's where we make our decisions. That's where our inhibitions come in play. And that area of the brain is just practically turned off. So that's the reason that they continue to make the bad decisions. In the middle of the brain, at the bottom of that brain, is where the pleasure center is, the nucleus accumbens. And that is the area that the dopamine takes over with the receptors from the use of the drugs. The dopamine is what makes us feel good. When we're normally in life, if you go to a birthday party, you have a child born, you're kissing your girlfriend or your wife, that is the dopamine release to that pleasure center. Well, what the drugs do, it takes over that pleasure center to where the normal activity, the normal things that you used to love in life, goes clear to the back seat. Because a lot of people say that you love to fly fish all of your life. You get addicted to drugs, eventually those people will walk away from fly fishing as long as they're addicted, because they get their pleasure out of taking those drugs. And it completely rewires the brain. And it takes, and you can see this, it took 14 months for this person to get back to where the brain is functioning pretty normal. And that is the reason why our community mental health centers will never work, because they do not keep the people long enough. We have to be able to have these people someplace to where we can keep them away from the drugs long enough for the brains to heal. And that's the only way we're going to help them. If we don't do that, nothing is going to change. Like you said, the definition of insanity, and we've been doing it now for 30 years and it's not working.
When I look at this here, and you think about like opiates, for example, there's other factors too that make a play into this. And I found out, because I did a genetic test, the 23andMe, that I have this SMP that basically causes me to have half the amount of enzymes necessary to remove opiates, which means that I'm at a twice as likely, to have an overdose And and I've noticed that, there was a couple of times in my life where I had an injury and they gave me, codeine, or they gave me, some other type of opiate. And I felt so just loopy and out of sorts, way more than, and now I understand that it's probably because I should be taking half of that dose. So there's people.
That's very true. That's very true. Genetics has a big play into this. And one of the things that Dr. Goldstein and I were talking about is that before they even get to the point to where they're doing the MRI scans of the brain, there's lots of questionnaires, there's blood work, we're doing the genetic testing. You have to find out what a person is capable of being able to do, because there are a lot of genetic markers that set you up for failure. And we need to know that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's called the P450 enzyme is what it is. And it's apparently it's not uncommon. It is, I think, like 30% of the population or something like that has this. So, those are probably the 30% that are at the highest risk of addiction and overdose.
Yes.
So very,
you can't fight your DNA. You can't
No.
fight your DNA.
Yeah, you certainly can't. So what do you think is, I guess, the next steps looking forward? What can people within their communities and their families and individuals, what can we do to support those that are struggling with mental illness and addiction, in our own backyards?
Every family in West Virginia, I would say almost every family in West Virginia, either has a family member that's been addicted to drugs, or they have a close friend who's had an addiction problem. And the only way we're going to turn this around, if we get the legislature, we'd have to get the legislature involved, because we have to change the laws to where the judges and the prosecuting attorneys have other options other than sending them to prison. We have to be able to have the laws to where a prosecuting attorney can say, well, I'm going to send you, you can either go to prison or I can send you to the hospital. But then the point is, we have to have the hospital. So we have to get enough people on board to where we have the resolve and we have the motivation to get this change, because nothing's going to change if we continue like we are right now. It's just not going to change. It's impossible. And we now have the proof through these scans of why it's impossible. The brain is the slowest healing organ in our body, and it takes months and months and months. And a 30, 60-day, even a 90-day rehab center is not going to work. And you're looking at why it won't work.
Now, specifically with the legislature, are there any bills that you're aware of right now that are working towards this effort? Or is there anybody that has committed to sponsoring a bill like this?
Not that I'm aware of. I've written Governor Morrissey a couple of different times, and I know that they were received. I've also written Senator Justice, Senator Capito, and I would urge everybody to talk to their state and local representatives. We need to get the legislature on board, because this is going to take a monumental movement to go back to bring us another state hospital and to get away from the tired and the failed policies that we've been doing for the last 30 years. I mean, it's not working, and it's not going to work. Human nature is not changing. We need to get back to what actually works. And we now have proof that another design of taking care of the MIDAH, the mentally ill, drug addicted, and the homeless, will work, but we have to make ourselves do it. Nothing's going to change if we don't do it.
So one of the things that I know about in West Virginia is that we've won and secured settlements totaling over $1 billion with payouts scheduled to be received over time until 2036 and beyond. That right there, the West Virginia First Foundation is tasked with distributing 72.5% of these funds, along with local governments in the state. It seems to me that it's a no-brainer that we need to talk to these folks and talk to our state legislature and make sure that funds that have been collected for this very issue are distributed appropriately to be able to build a hospital for this purpose. Because Obviously they're trying to reduce taxes, and we don't want to increase taxes. But here's a way that we can find the funds right here, from these lawsuits that have already been settled. And I would say the cost savings to the prisons, that would be another area that we could probably redirect some funding, from the prison into these types of programs. It seems to make sense to me, and I can't imagine that you would have legislators that would disagree with this.
It'd be very difficult to disagree with this, because part of this is just science. And then the other part of it is common sense. And the other part of it is historical failures that we've done over the last 30 years. What we've been doing does not work. And West Virginia has a stigma. And if we are going to, and anybody that's from West Virginia, and I've been all around this world, I have lived in San Francisco, I've lived in Napa, I've lived in Seattle. I have been all around this country and all around the world. There's no place like West Virginia. And it is a wonderful, wonderful place, but we have a stigma. When I would walk down through one of the agency's halls back in San Francisco, there was one agent in particular, and we later on became best friends. And he would yell out, "Hey, and he'd see me walk by the door. He'd yell out, 'Hey, hillbilly, you wearing shoes today?'" So, anyways, we had words several times. But West Virginia is a wonderful place, and we need to remove this stigma. And to remove this stigma, we got to get rid of this drug problem that is causing companies and entrepreneurs and people that have the businesses from moving to West Virginia. If we want to have a bunch of jobs come into this state, we have to have a very good look about ourselves. And right now, we don't have that. And we have
a good, healthy workforce. Yep.
Yes,
absolutely.
we have to solve this this reflection of ourselves that everybody looks at. And when anybody looks into the data and they say that, well, West Virginia's got the highest drug overdose rate in the nation, they're like, I'm not going there.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Wood, I hope we can work together on this. This is something that I care about. I do have worked on some getting some bills, pushed out to the state legislature, and I would love to work with you on this issue and help advocate for it with the senators and the representatives that I know personally. I think it's something that makes sense, and if we can get the right number of people together to focus on this, this is a great issue because it's not a politicized issue. It's something that both sides of the aisle should be able to come together and find common cause towards. So I really look forward, though, to talking with you more about this offline, and hopefully we can get together and make some introductions and get the right people involved in the state legislature. So
I'd be all for it, Nate. I'd appreciate it.
Well, we're just about out of time, and I always like to offer up to my guests to have the final word. We've talked about a lot of different things on this issue, and people have short attention spans. So if there's one thing that you want people to take away from this conversation, what would that be?
Everybody already knows the problem. What I'm talking about, everybody already knows. Anybody that's been alive any period of time, they have seen this time and time and time again. Family savings accounts are being drained because they're spending that money in our community clinics or some other place trying to get a loved one help, and it's not working. These people are in and out of the detox centers and the rehab centers, and it's not working. So I would ask everybody that to contact their local representative, their state representative. If they live in one of the bigger communities, talk to the mayor. Like I was talking to the Wheeling mayor tonight, we need to talk to the governor and to the legislature and make sure that we get the people involved that we must have, or this is not going to go no place. And we're going to continue to lose 4 people a day in the state. And those families that have been dealing with those addictions, they've been living a nightmare every day. But after that person dies of an overdose, they've got a nightmare that never ends for the rest of their lives. It never ends. You cannot replace a child. Yeah. So I hope people understand that this is not a partisan issue. This is an issue of trying to save our West Virginia.
Yeah. There's another thing too, another aspect to this that we didn't really touch on, but it is so connected. And that is, we have over 7,000 children in the system. These are kids in foster care or in the CPS system, because they've been removed. The majority of these kids have been removed because they have parents that are incarcerated due to drug abuse.
Yes.
Solving this problem solves our prison overpopulation issue. It solves the problem of how many kids that we have that are in the system. And it has a huge impact for the good, for our communities. So I would really just want to second what you said. Encourage people to reach out to your representative, reach out to your state senator, and ask them for help, and tell them about Dr. Norman Wood. And on that note, so Doctor, where can people reach out to you? Are you on social media? Do you have a website?
Yes, they can go to Facebook and look me up and messenger me on Facebook without any trouble.
Okay. And then also, I want to just point out here, folks, Dr. Wood has written a couple of books that are pretty amazing. These are all, it's like spy novel type, movie. So these are based on his life, but they're written in a novel style. And the one is Red Sword, which is the first book. And then book 2 right here is Thorn. And where can people find these books? Are they on Amazon?
Yes, they are on Amazon. I have 4 novels on Amazon, and it just continues the Team Thorn that we started back in 1986.
So if you guys if you like the Tom Clancy style of novel, which I do, so I know I'm going to love these books, make sure and check those out. I always like to end my show in prayer. I realize that we have our part to do, but we need God's help in this. It is a huge problem that goes way beyond, even our abilities, I think, and we need some divine assistance in this. So I'm going to just close our eyes real quick and pray. Heavenly Father, Lord, I thank you so much for Dr. Wood and what he's doing, and for bringing up this cause. Lord, I pray that you would bring the right people into the mix within the state legislature, within the medical system in West Virginia. And Lord, I pray that we would become a champion for solving this problem, and that it would be a light to other states that are having this problem as well. Lord, I pray that you would help us to be able to find the will within our state legislature to solve this problem, and to put forward ideas that are not doing the same thing that we've always done, but are combating this by trying to bring these people some help so that they can actually get addiction free. And for those, Lord, that are mentally ill, Lord, I pray that you would help us to be able to find ways of bringing these people out of that mental illness and into, having a healthy mind, Lord. And I pray, God, that you would just please help us to be successful in this effort. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. And I'd just like to add one thing. If somebody would be interested about the books, they can go to Amazon. And if they would like to see an old video, they go to youtube.com and search Special Agent Norman Wood. There's an old video back then.
All right, definitely.
Been a pleasure. Been a pleasure, Nate.
Likewise. And folks, remember to like and subscribe to the show. We were having some issues with bandwidth, so I had to close down my windows that were in a couple of places where I usually am in the comments and talking to people. So if you didn't get a response back to me on the chat, that's why. But I want to encourage you guys to, if you watch my show and you want to engage in conversation, the best place to do that is over on pill.net or the Foxhole on the app on your phone. I'm usually very engaged over there, and we'll talk to people and answer questions. And you can also find this show on Rumble. The best way to find it is go to Rumble and just search for the Raising Cain Show. But you'll find me at the Patriots Prayer Network, because that's the network that I broadcast with. And I also do a couple of other things. I have a radio program, which actually airs right now, Tuesday nights at 7. And it is with America Out Loud talk radio. And it's Unleash the Political News Hour on Tuesdays. The other thing that I'm doing is I do a lot of writing, and I write a lot of Substack articles. You can find that at mcpoda.substack.com. mcpoda was my code name as a whistleblower. And so you can find commentary on political issues that are going on, cybersecurity, national security, those types of things. So I had a couple of articles that I put out this week, and you might want to check them out. Anyways, thank you guys for joining. God bless you. Make sure tonight the president is going to address the Congress, and that's going to happen, I think, at 9 p.m. Eastern. So if you're not aware of that, now you are. I'm definitely going to be checking that out. But don't forget to stay engaged in your community. That's the only way we solve these problems. We can't turn a blind eye to them. We have to take control over our own lives, over our own families, and over our own communities. And that is where we can have the most impact, is locally. So I want to encourage all of you to reach out to your representatives, to your state legislators, because that's where it's going to get done. Your county officials as well. God bless you, and have a wonderful night.
Thank you, Nate.
Raise some Cain. You gotta raise some Cain. In the heartland where the faith runs strong, we've seen the shadows growing long. Watch those around us be deceived. Yeah, the fight is at our doors, no matter who we believe. Corruption, lawless day and night, we'll speak the truth into the light. We'll bring the battle, heed the call, watch the whole thing fall. We gotta raise some Cain, show the lies, break some chains and make things right. Feel the power, be the change, time is now. We gotta raise some Cain.